Control Players Unite.
Hey Control Nation, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dr. Red. This video is a presentation on choosing a control archetype for oneself. Here we have the 16 methods of control in the Pokemon TCG. Most players play a combination of them in the process of playing control, though it is possible to focus exclusively on one. These methods are what you work with when building a control style deck. Both these methods and the individual Pokemon that enable them are called archetypes. So how does one begin to choose a control archetype? I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that there are at least 3 options a player ought to consider when choosing a control archetype as one's own. These options aren't all that different from aggressive archetypes, except that control style play often comes with a level of technicality not found in aggressive play, so these options come with the caveat that control style play often requires an extra layer of detail in learning and piloting its archetypes. The first option to consider is, how difficult of a piloting job do you want the deck to have? This question is important because some players relish challenges while others just want to pick up and play. It is, however, important to note that mastering all of an archetype's matchups often takes copious amounts of time, so piloting becomes more and more difficult the deeper one wishes to pursue an archetype. At least when starting off, some archetypes, though, are easier than others. This chart refers to an overarching sense of difficulty when first approaching archetypes. And please remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are not the only examples, just something to help you imagine what's going on with difficulty. Using Pokemon as an example, Pidgeot EX and Ursaluna are difficult to master because the former induces analysis paralysis with all the choices it offers, and the latter has an easily breakable loop. That doesn't mean they cannot win, though. It just means there's an extra step or two involved in piloting them properly. Iron Thorns EX typically runs 4 copies of itself, and all it needs is a future booster energy capsule and energy to attack. Easy enough, but the mid-ranking comes from it being rather tedious in some matchups due to its lack of options. Last is Block Snorlax. It's an easy-to-pilot deck to the effect all one needs to do is put Snorlax in the active and wait. It helps to have multiple Snorlaxes and a draw engine, but that really is the gist of it. Now we move on to the second consideration in choosing a control archetype, which is competitive edge. This concept refers to how badly you want to win, and it asks you how competitive are you really, and what are you trying to win? Are you just aiming for locals, or do you want to go for something more serious like a regional tournament? Or maybe you want to stick to the online client. Though that does not automatically change one's competitive spirit, it may impact your archetypal choice. At any rate, this question of competitive edge matters because while in theory any deck can win any tournament at any time, some decks lend themselves to victory easier than others, regardless of their difficulty level. So if you're all about winning, you'll want to decide, how much do I want to win and at which level? Perhaps you're even motivated to take a less likely to win archetype and pilot it to champion level status. And that kind of motivation, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is what this final concept attempts to communicate. And that is pleasure. By pleasure, I mean how much fun you actually have playing the game with your archetype, or what kind of control do you enjoy the most? For instance, do you want to trap Pokemon in the active spot? Do you want to wipe them off the board completely? Perhaps you like forcing your opponent to make hard decisions. Maybe instead you have fun denying them the spoils of knockouts. Whatever it is, it matters. Because you are more inclined to play the archetype and master all of its matchups if you actually like piloting it. In other words, why suffer when you can enjoy the process? For example, why bother piloting Snorlax when it makes you miserable, even if it is easy to pilot at first, when you can pilot Ursaluna and have just as much fun regardless of your success? Or is it that success matters more? That's where the competitive edge comes in. And that's where you need to decide for yourselves in order to select a control archetype. To conclude, for players to decide on a control archetype, they ought to consider the difficulty in piloting, the competition one wants to embrace, and the pleasure one takes in playing the archetype. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. What did I miss? Where am I wrong? Please leave a comment. Take care of yourselves, and may God hold you in the palm of his hand.